Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Peter Boll, co-founder and principal data scientist at DrivenData.org. Peter, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you?
I'm doing well, Epi. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, fantastic, Peter, all the way from Seattle. Peter, tell us about the inspiration behind DrivenData.org. What motivated you to start it?
Yeah, well, this is a good time for us to be talking because actually just this month we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary of being around. And what Driven Data does is we try to use data science, machine learning, and AI to solve problems for social impact organizations. And we do that by running online challenges where data scientists around the world can put their heads together to come up with solutions for very specific problems for nonprofits, NGOs, social enterprises, folks working on things like climate, education, public health, the whole gamut where you might find some interesting data to work on. And the reason we started this is that 10 years ago, no one was talking about those kinds of things. It was very hard to find applications of this data toolkit in social sector organizations. And as you can imagine, a lot has changed in the last 10 years. And even in the last couple of years, with the explosion of LLMs and tools like ChatGPT, many, many, many more people are thinking about how to use this toolkit to help improve people's lives. So we started it really with this idea of how do we communicate to, on the one hand, the social sector about what the opportunities are for using data, saying, hey, we're running this challenge for a group that builds water pumps all over the developing world, and they want to do predictive maintenance. They want to send people to repair water pumps before they break so they don't have downtime. And that lets us have a little case study to say anyone else who builds and maintains water pumps, they could do the same kinds of things with their data. And at the same time, we also want to communicate to the data community, data scientists, people with these highly in-demand skills that they don't have to go work at a large tech company to find really interesting, compelling data problems. There are actually plenty of those in the social sector as well. So we sort of started with that seed and have grown since over the last 10 years to have run dozens and dozens of challenges across all kinds of impact areas.
Nice. And what was the motivation behind you starting starting Driven Data?
Yeah, for me personally, it was about pulling together sort of two threads in my biography. One of them was that in undergrad, I was a philosophy major with a focus on ethics, and I had always sort of focused in that domain on really practical ethics questions, decisions that you make in the context of your life, and how to do that in a way that felt morally right. And then after college, I happened to sort of get lucky, and I started at this apprenticeship program at Microsoft that was a like program for people who didn't have computer science degrees, where you did half programming boot camp in the morning, then you worked on a product team in the afternoon. You did that for 9 months. If it worked out, you stuck around with a full-time job. And so that's where I learned programming and computer science. I worked at Microsoft for 5 years, but I wasn't sort of getting the fulfillment that I wanted to there. And at the same time, I was getting asked these sort of data questions that I wanted more of a background in. So I went back to grad school. I did a degree in the degree was actually computational science. I think it would be called data science today if they would rename it, but that wasn't really the popular term at the time. So that was half statistics, half computer science. And then I started Driven Data with a couple friends from grad school at the time, really looking to bring together my interest in practical ethics and social impact with the technical skills that I had built up over that first part of my career.
Nice. Uh, is there any platform similar like yours? Like, how does, for example, Kaggle, is Kaggle something similar to what you guys are doing, or?
Yeah. Yeah. So Kaggle is a Google-owned platform that runs machine learning challenges. And so, in a structural sense, some of the challenges are very similar. The ways in which we're different are a few. One, our community is just focused on these social impact use cases. And so Kaggle runs a lot of commercial challenges as well, and sort of has a broader footprint, but we're trying to build this community of people with data skills that really care about social impact. So not only do they get involved in the challenges, but they also get involved in the social impact community more broadly. And on top of that, we've sort of got a broader range of kinds of challenges that we set up for organizations. So Kaggle's really focused on very specific machine learning challenges.
Mhm.
We've got that too, but we also have the ability to do things like simulation challenges, where, say, like we ran one recently that was looking at trying to optimize a system where you have buildings that have solar panels, battery packs, and are connected to the grid. It's a hard optimization challenge to understand when to charge the batteries, when to use the batteries for power, when to use the solar panels for power, when to use the grid for power, when to sell energy back to the grid. And that's an important energy optimization challenge. And so we also have these challenges that are sort of outside of direct machine learning. And then even beyond that, we run like qualitative challenges as well. So it's not strictly machine learning, but it's working with data. So we just finished one with NASA that was looking at how to use the NASA data to work towards progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals in your own community. So people came up with demos, they recorded videos of the kinds of things they did with the data, they wrote write-ups, and we had a judging panel get together and say, okay, who had the most creative solutions to using this data for local impact in their community?
Nice. Now, what do you see as the most significant trends happening right now in the world of the challenges, but for a social impact with the community of that you got?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because obviously the like overwhelming trend right now is people wanting to do things with LLMs and in particular natural language processing based AI. We've been doing that kind of thing for the last 10 years, but right now, with all the attention that tools like ChatGPT are getting, people are very excited about applying those emerging tools, those new methods in their own specific domains. And so we're also part of that AI wave that's happening right now, really focused on language and language as a tool.
Nice. Now, what excites you most about the future of the industry that you're in?
Yeah, I think there's just so much potential to really accelerate the amount of impact that organizations can have. And a lot of what we do, we think of as sort of good automation. We're automating systems that really have a broad impact because they're able to scale up how much work they do. And it's not the sort of commercial side of the equation where automating means that someone loses a job. It's often automating tasks that really the people working at these nonprofits shouldn't be doing anyway. So I'll give you an example. We worked with an organization that helps school systems to understand the breakdown in their budgets and to benchmark their spending against neighboring school districts. They want to say, hey, are we spending too much on facilities or too much on textbooks? We want to get our budget right, make sure that we're getting the right outcomes for the money that we're spending. And one of the huge things that they spent a ton of time doing was looking through the budget records of all these school districts, reading individual line items and trying to parse them and say, oh, this like sentence here that's like FAC.MANT, that's facilities maintenance. And so that's got to go into this category that we understand. And that was all before their important work. Their important work was actually doing the comparisons of the spending and being able to make recommendations for the school districts on how to be more effective. But they spent all this time parsing and understanding these budgets. So we helped run a challenge that set up a tool for them to be able to automate that process of going through these thousands of budget line items, putting them into the right categories so they could do the important work of actually thinking about how that money was getting spent rather than trying to understand each of those.
Love that. What was the price challenge for that?
That was one of our early challenges. I think that one was just $10,000 and it got a great result out of that. And it's funny to see sort of how things have grown since then. One of the challenges we're running right now is with the US Bureau of Reclamation, which is one of these federal agencies that no one has ever heard of. And what they do is they manage water rights in the Western United States. So you can imagine that water that comes through rivers and streams and comes out of melted snow in the mountains needs to get used for agriculture and other uses, needs to get stopped in reservoirs so it can be distributed. And that sort of goes across multiple states wherever the water is. And so that becomes a federal issue to manage that effectively. And right now we've got a challenge that has a $500,000 prize pool to estimate the flow in individual streams to say how much water is coming through this stream over the course of a water season based on satellite imagery and the weather records and historical data and understanding of the soil types and what's around the particular water basin that you're in, and putting all of that together for this very complex problem, really to solve a problem that has a huge amount of economic impact.
Nice. And how does your community, is your community mostly in US, North America, or is like spread in other parts of the world?
Yeah, it's totally a global community. I think that really, if you look at our challenge winners, and we publish blog posts with sort of bios of all of our winners on our blog, uh, and it's rare to have, we usually have something like 3 to 5 top places. A lot of those are teams. It's rare to have more than one winner from the US in that winners pool. It really is a global community. And one of my favorite examples of that is we ran a challenge to uh, look at predicting household level income rates uh, across the globe based on survey data. And that was in part funded by a group at the World Bank. And the winner of that challenge was from the Philippines, and really showcased some impressive data skills, and got a full-time offer from the World Bank out of it, moved to Washington, D.C., and has been there really helping
Oh,
them push forward how they use machine learning over the last few years that he's been there. And so it's cool to see sort of those collaborations that happen out of this access to talent that people wouldn't have otherwise start to emerge through the challenge community.
wow, that's amazing. So great to hear that. Now, obviously, Peter, when you do innovative things, you have to try lots of new things. What is your approach to failure? Because when you try new things, always you ended up failing and keep failing until you get it right. So, what's your approach to fail when you try new things?
Uh, I will say it does hurt sometimes still to try and fail. It doesn't get easy, but I think we try to look at it from a learning mentality. And so one of my co-founders was in the Coast Guard, and one of their debrief mechanisms that they have is called a hot wash. And it comes from this analogy that you want to clean off your equipment while that equipment is still hot because that gets the most dirt off of it. So right after that equipment gets used is when you want to clean it. Uh, and it's this mentality that we take to debriefing the projects that we work on. So we do a challenge, and immediately afterwards, we go through this structured set of things of what could we do better, what went well, what didn't go well. Let's try to learn about this while we've got all of the memory of the idiosyncrasies of the little things that happened in there, and turn that into a learning mechanism right in that moment where it's really fresh. So that's the kind of learning mentality that we try to take to those failures, recognizing that there's always going to be something to improve. Not everything is going to be a smashing success. And like Yeah, it'll hurt sometime, but if you've got a good supportive team around you, then you can push through that and you can say, okay, we'll do better next time.
Yeah. Well, I always look at I like to look at the way punishing yourself for failing. It's a terrible thing to do, but punishing yourself for not trying to fail and fail fast, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point because it's so easy, especially like with some of our larger clients to just say, okay, let's just tick the boxes of this challenge that they want. Like if we're working on some of these government challenges, all of this work goes into what they put out and say, hey, we want to run a challenge. Here's the like full description of the challenge. But they're not experts in designing challenges. We're experts in designing challenges. We've been doing it for 10 years. We know how to think about the prizes. We know how to think about the data. We know how to think about the different ways to set up the tracks. We know how to get engagement. And so on a lot of those, we have to say, okay, this was your idea that you laid out. But if you really want to make this a success, we think that based on our experience, you have to do things differently than you've been thinking of, and really pushing back on that and trying to make that the best experience that we can for participants and to get the best outcomes, I think ends up being worth it in the end.
Yeah, great point. Now, Peter, what does a word bold mean to you?
Think being bold. This is interesting because this is not a question that I got ahead of time, and so I get to think about it now and try to decide. Uh, but I think being bold is standing up in the face of adversity and pushing forward on a path where there are really substantial headwinds. And so I think it's really that contrast of heading in a direction and having lots of things pushing in the opposite direction that characterizes boldness. Uh, and so it's partly this definition through uh, setting up some sort of adversity.
Yeah, very good point.
What does
And
bold mean to you? What do people usually answer to that? Now
well,
I'm
I mean,
interested.
there's a lots of answers that I get. Obviously it's courage. I get the clarity. I get
Yeah.
the focus. There's a lot of those.
Oh, I like clarity and focus. I wish I had thought of that. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the reason why I asked to everybody because for a lot of people it means slightly different things beyond being
Yeah.
courageous and all that, right? And truly trying to understand better from people in terms of the backgrounds and what they're thinking in terms of being bold, because our motto is be bold and know your power, right? And so with bolder words, that's what we're trying
Yeah.
to really bring this forward to all the not just entrepreneurs, but to the leadership and people in innovation, and so on.
Yeah. And there are different sort of frameworks and ways of thinking about that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Great. So, Peter, it was great seeing you. Always be bold. Congrats for all your achievements and your work that you're doing. I really love it. Thank you for joining me in this Bold Talk series and look forward to seeing you again soon. Until next time, take care, be great, and be bold always.
Thanks, Epi. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Cheers.